Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Hi, Chuck Blakeman. Great to be with you again. Today, we're going to ask the question, is there a business maturity clock ticking in your head? We're going to do this in two parts. Today, we'll talk about part one, how to set up the idea of a business maturity date. To set up this podcast in 2 sentences, let's quickly recall the 2 fundamentals of business maturity from an earlier podcast. First, the owner isn't the only or the main producer. And second, the business makes money while the owner is not around. A mature business is producing both money and time for you. Beyond these 2 markers, a mature business can look like a lot of things depending on the business owner's desire for future involvement. But these 2 give us basic clarity on what it means to have a mature business. Just a couple of podcasts back, we looked at the 7 stages of business ownership. Business maturity starts at stage 5, success, because it's the first stage which gives you both time and money on a regular basis, not just money. Most business owners tie their initial business maturity date to stage 5. You get to define what stage 5 means to you, as long as it includes both regular time and consistent money. You could decide it means something like this: a minimum of, say, $60,000 a year coming out of the business instead of funding the business like you might be right now, and every Friday off, time and money. And the business still makes money on that Friday. Or it could mean $500,000 in income and 50% of your week off. You get to choose, and usually it expands over time. Some of it depends on where you're starting and some on what you define as your ideal lifestyle. Again, a later podcast. Although most business owners initially tie their business maturity date, or what we call our BMD for short, to stage 5, you can decide that you want to be at stage 6 significance as a business owner at your BMD like I did, and be in a strategic leadership capacity, providing the guiding light to your business, but not having to do a lot of production. Or you can move to stage 7 and become the company myth, something I never want to do. The founder who walks the halls occasionally, sponsors charity events, and meets with leadership to talk about the future and maintaining clarity of vision. Mrs. Fields for Mrs. Fields Cookies and Charles Schwab have become myths in their company. They were real people. You can become a myth too, if you intend to be. But again, stage 6 and 7 are not usually the target of a BMD, but of a future ideal lifestyle that could be still a few years out. Setting a business maturity date is eating the ideal lifestyle elephant one bite at a time. Again, this isn't about growing a big business, and it certainly isn't about growing one just to sell it. It's about growing one that allows you to build a significant life, one you can really enjoy and find fulfilling. If you would enjoy being the company myth, then stage 7 succession is probably your target. If you want to keep your finger in the pie but have real freedom, stage 6 significance is a great place from which to run a business for 30 years. That's the great thing about business maturity. You get to design your own ideal lifestyle, your own future, and then use your company to get there. It's all within your reach if you regularly take the 3 simple steps we talked about in the last podcast: make a decision, put a date on it, and most importantly, go public. If you haven't listened to or watched that podcast yet, you might benefit from doing so here. To help business owners around the world with this 3-step process in building a mature business, we started 3 to 5 Club in 2010. We created it because after starting and growing 5 or so businesses the old-fashioned way, I realized that every business owner needs a place where they can go to say 3 magic words: I don't know, or whatever your 3 magic words are. We need a safe place to be able to do that. Why the name 3 to 5 Club? I've become convinced that it's normal, not average, but normal, and very doable for businesses to grow from the printing of a business card to basic stage 5 success in 3 to 5 years. And it is stage 5 where you can begin to declare you have a mature business. In stage 4 stability, you can be making a lot of money, but still not have a mature business that provides both time and money for you on a regular basis, not just money. There's all sorts of evidence that growing a business to maturity in 3 to 5 years is normal. It's just not average. Most businesses are average. Let's shoot for being normal. We all know that woman who, by the time she was 35, had grown her first business to maturity, has other people running it, and is now busy growing her second. People like her are not uniquely talented or lucky. They are just intentional. In the best and worst of circumstances, you can grow a mature business in, say, 2 to 7 years. So I'm not rabid about 3 to 5, but I do believe that 3 to 5 is not a high bar and is doable by every business, barring big headwinds from outside forces. We have 3 to 5 clubs around the US, Europe, and Africa. And what we found is we could have called it 1 to 3 club, because owners who have been at it for 10 years are regularly getting to stage 5 or better in well less than 3 years. From the printing of a business card, stage 5 might take 3 to 5 years. But if you've got a lot of the foundation laid, you can get there a lot faster. You don't have to pick a date in the 3 to 5 year range. What you should do is pick something that is at least slightly scary. If you go out 10, 12 years, there's no urgency, and you're probably just playing office. So be ambitiously lazy, get it done quicker. A few years ago at a small business conference, a woman walked up after I spoke and said that she wanted to start a dog walking business. I asked her when she planned to make her first million, and she looked at me as if I had grown another head. She laughed and said, I'm walking dogs. I then referred her to a big dog walking company that went from zero to well over $3 million in less than 3 years. How did they do it? They simply intended to. And as yet, she did not have that intention. What was her intention? She intended to walk dogs, but they intended to build a business that walks dogs. Do you hear the difference? They both got what they intended. As I shared this with her, she said, but I love walking dogs. And I responded, great. If you build a multi-million-dollar dog walking business, you can walk dogs anytime you want. I then asked her if there were dogs she didn't like walking, but had to. And of course there were. Wouldn't it be great to build a business where you get to choose which dogs you walked? That's freedom in your business, not from it. Let's talk about business maturity and that intentionality. As you see in these two very different approaches to walking dogs, intentionality is everything. But does that mean you need to have all the details figured out beforehand? No, quite the contrary. We regularly look back and laugh at our own business projections. What's important is being intentional about the result, not about what process you need. Details about the process will follow the clarity we get about what we really want when we're done. And that clarity brings an energized intentionality that we might not otherwise have for the details. Being intentional means you commit to the very few actions that will get you where you want to go. And that clarity will help you identify the details and the steps of the process along the way. Once you know what it looks like when you're done, if you're not actively involved in the details of the next step, you're not being intentional. And again, are probably just playing office, very busy, but not going anywhere. So in order to be intentional with your decision to grow your business to maturity, what is the question you have to ask yourself? This is where we pick back up on the second most important, second least asked question in business from our last podcast. And that question, of course, is when. So using when as our question, I will be bold and say that I believe the single most important message you should take away from all these podcasts that we're going to be doing is to pick a business maturity date. Get a BMD. Pick some meaningful day. And yes, even a time of day on that day, sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, when you will no longer be the sole or even the main producer, so that the business can make money when you are not there. It will change you forever from a business hostage to someone heading straight for freedom. And remember, rich people have money, but no time. And so they have no freedom. Wealthy people have both time and money and real freedom. So let's shoot for being wealthy, not just rich. I languished as a hostage to my first 5 businesses, each time building something that gave me money, but no time, and therefore no real freedom. In my 6th business, committing to my business maturity date, my BMD, took me past the startup fear and right through the stage 4 stability hostage situation that most people call the American dream. I had real clarity from the beginning on what I wanted when I was done. At my BMD, I decided I would have a business that was partially in stage 5, with a lot of it in stage 6, stretching into stage 7, because no business is ever neatly in one stage. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. In stage 5, the business owner is still partially in production of some sort. He or she can be one of the 3 chair makers, but not the only chair maker. She can make money personally, but others are making money when she's not there. In stage 6, there are parts of the business that are fully the responsibility of others, and the business owner just checks in to give guidance here and there. At my BMD, I wanted other producers and I wanted the administration of the business to be on someone else's shoulders who would love doing that and would be better at it than me. And after hitting my BMD, I would then reset for my ideal lifestyle date a few years out. Setting my BMD created a real sense of urgency. It involved a small but measurable raise in income and also a very aggressive raise in unscheduled time in and outside of my business. I didn't have time to languish in any of the business stages. I was on a mission, and the when clock was ticking loudly in my head. So let's talk about how I arrived at my business maturity date to give you some idea of how you could do this. On March 6th, 2007, I officially started Crankset Group with a business leaders insight lunch and 24 people in attendance. I recruited for 15 plus hours a week for 2 weeks before that because nothing worth doing comes easy. 3 years, 11 months, 2 weeks, and 22 and a half days from that date, I had an early stage mature business that made money while my wife and I were on vacation. To get there, I was ambitiously lazy, we'll talk about that, and worked relentlessly while the clock was ticking so that I could work less with a mature business. In 2007, I intended to have an early stage mature business on Friday, February 18, 2011, at 10 a.m. On that day, I intended to have a majority of it in stage 6 and some of it in stage 7, with others running a good chunk of the day-to-day. I knew how much money it would make on that day and how much I would take home. More importantly, I knew how much time my business would be giving me then as well. Why 10 a.m. on that Friday? Because at 8:30, I intended to have a staff meeting and turn over the business to my staff to run, have an early mimosa with them, and be out of the office by 10 a.m. to pack my bags. At 6:10 p.m. that Friday evening, I intended to be on a plane with my wife to Auckland, New Zealand, her dream vacation, for 3 weeks of celebration. We would land in Auckland at 7:25 a.m. the next morning, Sunday morning, and including airfare, hotels, food, excursions, shopping money, and slush fund, the trip would cost us $12,380, a lot less than today. When I initially went public in 2009 in the first edition of my first book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, we didn't have any staff. But that wasn't important to me because I knew we could figure out how to get there as long as we knew where there was, and most importantly, when to be there. To realize this vision, I had to constantly remind myself that 90% of the answer is just asking the right question. And I believe we had the right question. How do I build a mature business by Friday, February 18, 2011 at 10 a.m. that gives me both time and money on a regular basis? With the right question always in front of me, I believed I could figure out the details and the steps of the process along the way and eat that elephant one bite at a time. So we set our BMD in 2007, went public in early 2009, and even invited people to our BMD celebration, which at the time was a few years away. In March of 2010, 11 months before our BMD, we hired our first staff person. And after a few weeks, she began to grasp what I was trying to do and said lightheartedly, "Dude, you're not going to make it." But she worked hard with me to get there. On December 1st, 2010, we hired our second person. And by the time we left February 18, 2011 at 10 a.m., we had 4 full-time people and a few part-time. We had our 8:30 a.m. mimosas with the staff and stepped across the threshold of the business at 10 a.m. and headed for New Zealand for almost 3 weeks. We only checked in twice, once to view the checking account to see what the business was doing and it was making more money without us, and a second time to send everyone a picture of us sipping mimosas. Does hearing this change you even a little bit? Imagine what it's done for me and what it will do for you when you make the same commitment. It just might change you forever. So is there a business maturity clock ticking in your head? Do you know what changed me most? It was when I decided to pick an exact time of day, 10 a.m., and then went public. Picking the year 2011 wouldn't have changed me. Even picking February was only interesting. Picking that specific day, February 18th, had some real impact. But when I picked the time of day, something very interesting happened inside me. A business maturity clock started ticking in my head. I had just figured out how to make the priority of the important as urgent as all the tyrannical things in my business. Time was wasting because I picked a time of day. I had to work because I'm out of here at 10 a.m. I woke up many mornings after that thinking, oh no, I'm done at 10. I've only got until 10 in the morning. What do I need to do before 10? A great and healthy sense of urgency had been added to the priority of the important because I picked a time of day. I didn't just pick February 18 out of a hat either. I tested it first. After picking February 2011, I worked backwards using Stephen Covey's start with the end in mind principle. If I wanted X amount of money and X amount of time 4 years from now, then how much time and money do I need 3 years from now, 2 years from now, and 12 months from now? Once I had that 12-month figure for both time and money, I asked myself, what do I need to do in the next 3 months to get there in 12 months? And then I wanted to check and see if that was at all possible. I found it scary, but not terrifying or absurd. And if you do the same exercise and find out that in the next 3 to 12 months you have a Herculean task in front of you, you might want to back off on your BMD expectations and work backwards again until you arrive at something closer to scary. On the other side, if you pick a BMD 5 years from now and it gives you no sense of immediate urgency, then again, you're just playing office. We have to figure out how to make this very important thing urgent. All right, some other quick considerations in setting up a business maturity date. Don't shoot for nirvana on your BMD. If you're in stage 2, 3, or 4, the best goal for your BMD is to become an early stage mature business owner and reach for stage 5 success. Figure out the minimum salary and time you want from your business at stage 5, shoot for that, and then next year use the same mindset to begin to develop your ideal lifestyle. Again, a later podcast. For our BMD, we didn't expect to have a full-blown stage 6 or stage 7 business with someone else doing all the day-to-day decision-making. But we made sure that when we left for New Zealand, the business could make money while I began to take regular time off, both scheduled and unscheduled. We weren't making as much money as we wanted, nor were we getting all the time off we wanted, but we were regularly getting some of both from our business when we left for New Zealand. My time objective for our BMD was more aggressive than my income objective. On February 18, 2011 at 10 a.m., I wanted a day a week a month, and a month a year to get up in the morning and say, what should I do today? Every Friday, the last week of every month, and 1 month a year with nothing scheduled and no availability to the business. Your time and income objectives might be higher, they might be lower. Again, scary to you might be terrifying to me, and vice versa. Also be reminded to work hard up front and be ambitiously lazy. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to watch incredibly talented people employ the random hope strategy of business, work really hard, and just scrape along in the early years, just hoping something good will happen. Intentionality doesn't work that way. I was ambitiously lazy, working hard up front so that I wouldn't have to work as hard in the future. So the first year in 2007, I worked almost 7 days a week. The kids were out of the house, and Diane and I were up for the adventure. In 2008, it was a lot of 6-day weeks. In 2009, I got a few Fridays off. And in 2010, I got most Fridays and usually the last week of the month. Working hard up front ensured that we had done everything we could to be in a position by February 18, 2011 at 10 a.m. to start getting every Friday off the last week of the month and a month every year to decide what to do with that time. I was ambitiously lazy and worked hard up front so that I wouldn't have to work as hard later. This is about becoming freedom woman or freedom guy, but not vacation dude, unless, of course, that's what you want. Please note, I'm not saying I go on vacation all these days. A day a week a month, and a month a year adds up to 58.5% of the work year and 70% of all the days in a year that I'm not scheduled to be at work. So I don't need or want a lot of vacation, but I'm free to decide what to do on those days. And the ability to choose is very powerful wealth that few business owners get to experience. Yes, we take a lot more vacation than we used to, but I also started other businesses and some Africa initiatives to build businesses there and solve poverty, We also started another international advisory business, helping larger companies dump their industrial age management practices and get their culture and leadership right. So I did a lot of things besides vacation. That's me. You get to decide what to do with that time because you now have the freedom to choose. You're no longer treadmill guy. You are now freedom guy or freedom woman. In the next podcast, we'll talk more about how to measure freedom at your business maturity date. We'll talk about the 50% rule and other tips on bringing this date to reality. I'll see you there. Keep going.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.